That's a good. Nope. There you go.
Double dog dare ya.
Yep. We're live on YouTube.
Sweet.
You guys have me juggling way too many things over here.
I told Alan he should do the laptop, but I mean, you only have to use like 8 computers at once. Why can't you do that?
Hey, come on.
Come on.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Grow more arms.
One time I had to do a podcast from that seat. From that seat.
Yeah, you have had it the worst, I guess.
That sucked.
But what a podcast it was.
I do have this nice shot here that I rarely ever use.
Yeah, you made that shot up for something. The man behind the curtain.
It seemed like the thing to do at the time, but yeah, I rarely use it.
See, I worked long and hard to create the facade of the man behind the camera you never see, and you're just ruining my bit.
Just shattered that shit.
Says the guy in front of the camera.
Yeah.
I
Now
don't
he's
work
in
here
front of the
anymore.
camera.
I know, look at this. We have Ken on camera.
I know. The hell? He's like running away.
I like the gold background.
He's reverse Dr. Eviling over there. My pick of the weekend.
All right.
Who's typing?
Who's what? When, where, why, how?
That's Sebastian, I think.
Right.
I don't understand why it's... Sebastian, talk for a second.
Hey, Alan, I'm talking.
That's not that bad if he talks. Just when he blips the...
Sounds better if he doesn't talk.
Hey, Josh, shut the...
What?
Oh, I must have cut out there.
Wow. Josh used to be the one that always cut out.
Used to be.
Then he yelled at his cable company? Oh, speaking of which, who is the people that bought out Time Warner?
Charter?
The same people who did me.
It was Charter?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Charter.
So there was
Spectrum is the
Spectrum.
brand name.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
So there was a Spectrum truck out in my neighborhood today.
Sure.
And
Be afraid.
saw the truck, and it was the people across the street that just moved in. So I figured, they were getting cable or whatever. Fine. Think nothing of it. Then I go outside like a couple hours later, and the other lady, like somewhere down the cul-de-sac, is like pointing at my yard and like trying to yell something at me. And I look over at the box, just happens to be on my property, which is the node or the distribution box, and they left the fucking lid off.
Of course.
It's just sitting out there with the lid off, with some wires just hanging out, shit like that.
Just pour some water.
So what'd you do to it?
Oh, I put the freaking lid back on.
Oh. After doing...
I mean, everybody already has cable. All the cables are hooked up, so it's not like
Ah.
I'm doing anybody any favors. That box doesn't even lock. Like,
Good to know for the future.
yeah. There's, I think there's a lock on it, but it just doesn't work for crap. And the box sits in the ground, like, crooked. Like, when I first moved in and they hooked up the cable, like, I was having trouble with it, and they came out, and turned out, like, the guy was, like, he put, like, some kind of, whatever, like, tester thing
Yeah.
on one of the jacks. And then he calls me out, and he's like, hey, sir, look at this. And he, like, touches the box, just, like, moves it slightly, and then it's, like, a spectrum analyzer thing, and it goes apeshit. And he's like, well, I need to put a work order in, and I'm like, so can you do it? Like, how long is it going to take? And he's like, no, we actually have to do this like very quickly because we're like violating FCC rules
Yeah.
because we're leaking. We're not supposed to leak this signal out.
Yeah.
And it's actually like a very bad, like it can interfere, since we're close to an airport, it can interfere with freaking flights landing.
Nice.
So I was like, my cable, can it take down airplanes? Awesome.
Yeah. I was actually I was fairly impressed when I activated Time Warner at the apartment I'm in right now. Like, I just had a modem and I called them and they turned everything on and whatever, like switched the MAC address. And she was like, run a speed test. And she was like logged in the modem and looking at my signals and stuff. She's like, these signals are awful. So if you see a speed drop, call us because we should probably send someone out there to do it. And now I'm actually at twice the rated speed they were like when that happens. But like, I thought it was weird that they were telling me that I should probably get that looked at by them.
Knight Rider
free.
posted an amazing picture in the chat.
Unbelievable. What?
It's like a DSL distribution thing. It's a crap load of phone line.
Oh, good God.
Oh, jeez. That's not a cactus.
Oh,
That's the entire phone network for Australia.
that's amazing.
Pretty much.
Yeah, probably.
So let's get this crap on the road.
Yeah, shall we?
Yeah. Do it. Do it doggy style.
Wait, no.
Hey, whoa.
Oh.
Why did it? You devolved very quickly.
We're not even in the show yet,
trance.
Josh.
Come
Wait,
on.
we haven't even started yet.
So?
That's why.
How many shots are you into your drinking game already?
All the
What time is
shots.
I mean, we got the bourbon over there. We could do
Bourbon.
it.
Oh, shoot. I better have
Well,
a...
that's your first mistake.
I'm not big on bourbon.
The more you drink, the more barrels are going to be available for useful things.
Oh.
Get them over to Scotland so they can fulfill their actual true purpose.
Yes.
Oh crap! All right.
So I should just do the intro saying that I'm Ryan, right?
Sure.
I mean,
Yep.
I think that's an
I'm just
awesome idea.
Younger Ryan. I've just been replaced
Have
with
you
young
heard enough
Ryan.
times that you remember what he says?
Do we need to swap seats?
No, I'm not hosting this thing. Not that dedicated to the bit.
You could even
That
like,
would be pretty
you
good,
could even
though.
you can and then you can go first on the. Not only are you on the podcast finally, but you're going first on the podcast. To just be like, Ken Addison.
Addison.
I got one.
Okay,
I think we're good.
he's got it.
He
I got
says
it.
he's got it.
Guess what? I got it.
And then Alex is gonna do the switching wrong.
All right.
We're just waiting.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks.
I got your back, bro.
All right, let's do this.
Oh crap!
News of interest.
Okay.
I'm just letting you know. So don't hold back.
Chat says that you remind them of Ryan with a bad attitude.
And
I haven't spent enough time around Ryan.
Yeah.
What? What?
Do you need a clapboard?
I thought you said you wanted to do the intro.
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no, no.
No.
Sorry, I was like just waiting. I'm like, Ken, anytime you're
I'm in
ready.
the wrong chair. Couldn't do it. Impossible.
Okay. Are you gonna be in the thing? Like in the
We'll go with me last.
Okay.
I'll be the Alan.
Okay. Fine.
Ugh.
I
Hold
need
on. I got to take care of a certain person in the chat. There you go.
to- Oh. Ah.
What?
Ken was unleashing the IRC ban hammer.
Oh, actually, I did not.
You didn't ban the right person?
It's fine.
Wait, did you ban the whole?
No.
No, he banned the guy for
I
pointing
didn't.
out Ken still
it
hasn't
looked
updated
like
our IRC landing page.
It looks like you banned the whole Mibbit
No.
thing.
It looked like spam. I didn't read it close enough before I banned, so I'm gonna unban him because he shouldn't be banned for that.
Oh.
Once I can find where to do that.
Can't you like wild card unban?
I just need to remember what I banned. Oh, ncstate.net. Weird. Okay, he's unbanned.
Okay.
Bane first, ask questions later.
Absolutely. No, he was from a university, Kyle. He doesn't have a principal.
Then,
All right, let's do this. You guys ready?
please.
Nah.
Everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode number 435, being recorded February 1st, 2017. I'm Alan Malventano.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Sebastian Peak.
And I'm Discount Ryan Trout.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You're only like 3 inches shorter than him.
I'm slouching.
We've
Well,
secretly,
not
slouch.
only that, but you probably weigh a good 50 pounds less.
replaced.
I'm not gonna disparage my boss's weight. Well, my ex Ryan's
He's
weight,
not your boss. You can feel free.
It still feels like it.
He's still under the hammer.
It's
Under the-
Stockholm
under the,
syndrome. We
the
all know it.
oppressive, yes. He just refuses to leave. He's been sleeping in a cot in the back corner all these weeks.
Gigabit fiber.
He just stays.
What else do you need?
Came for the internship. He stayed for the gigabit fiber. Anyway,
Uber Eats apparently, but you can get that over the fiber too.
Prime Now, Uber Eats, Gigabit Fiber, a cot,
sure.
fridge.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't need anything more in life.
All right. Let's get to it. You can find out we are doing this show like we're doing the show right now. If you were on our spam list, I mean our notification list. We don't spam there, really. But yeah, there's a form on the website pcpro.com/.
Subscribe.
Oh yeah, pcpro.com/subscribe.
You can do it.
I almost said pcpro.com/podcast, but that's not the place where you sign up. You put your name, your email in there, and then you get added to a list, and we inform you when we're about to do live streams. Next up, if you wish, you can support us via Patreon. It's patreon.com/pcper, and it helps us immensely. And unfortunately, Discount Ryan Shrout does not have access, or does he?
No,
to
he doesn't.
Patreon. No.
Ryan's on Slack on his flight right now, so we'll see if we can get that from him.
Maybe Ryan will forward the messages to us, the names of the people
And the amounts.
who increase or become a Patreon subscriber to us.
How does he have Wi-Fi calling on that thing? You could call in.
It sounds like he has a 56K modem on that thing from
Yeah,
the
pretty
speed
much.
test. So
Even better.
he
That
might
would-
be able to get email and text chat.
That would make it awesome. I think he should like FaceTime. All right. Well, let's just get into it. Week in review. Hey, Sebastian's got something.
That's right.
What you
Let's
got?
get right into it.
What you got, Sebastian?
Well, a somewhat convoluted piece, but if you are interested in audio stuff, aptX audio is a different way of compressing audio, and it's something that you may have seen on any of the newer Bluetooth headphones, the more expensive stuff, and it's starting to enter the market a little bit more on a mainstream level. Like there are more and more like headphones. I know Audio-Technica announced some stuff at CES that has it, and there is an increasing number of Bluetooth speakers that will have it. And basically the whole issue with Bluetooth audio, and it's been significantly better since A2DP in the early 2000s was added to the Bluetooth stack. But unfortunately, the only way that Bluetooth audio can work is through compression, and the codec built in to Bluetooth compresses regardless of the source material. So say you're listening to something that's already compressed, like an MP3 or an audio stream like Pandora or Spotify or something, and you want to listen to it through Bluetooth headphones, it's going to re-compress the already compressed audio using lossy compression. And lossy compression, generally speaking, compression is done by these psychoacoustic principles where certain frequencies are easier for us to hear than others. So they use masking where, oh, this frequency will be at a certain level, so we can actually just omit this other frequency below it because you won't be able to hear it anyway. And so those principles are used to make the file smaller Because Bluetooth audio, even at its absolute max, the spec at its highest quality is up to 345 kilobits per second. So that seems like plenty, and the highest quality MP3s are like 320. So that shouldn't be an issue, except for the fact, and this is all kind of subjective. There's dissent on the side of whether psychoacoustic, whether like masking for lossy compression is actually audible or not, and I tried not to get into that, whether you can actually hear the difference between a CD and an MP3 and that sort of thing, because there's people on both sides of that. I'm on the side where you can, but basically one of the things that appealed to me right off the bat with aptX was it doesn't do that type of compression. It is using compression, and it is using something that could even be called lossy compression, but it is not using frequency based compression. It's using time-based compression, and it's using prediction. And the math behind it is actually pretty interesting if you look into it. And I cited a few links, some PDF files and things, and I found some actually some courses on YouTube I was watching. Some pretty exciting stuff inside of classrooms where they're literally just going over like a quantized wave and talking about the differences between the quantized samples and that sort of thing. But ultimately, the way that it works is like with a regular waveform, when you digitize it, and I have a big graph, there's like a diagram on the first page of the review. When you take the waveform, the up and down like smooth line, and digitize it, the resolution of that digitized wave is all based on how many times per second you're sampling it, basically, and then how accurately can you pick up the level, the actual amplitude of the frequency each time you do sample it. So, you know, you get up to 16-bit for the actual word length, the bit depth, and you sample it at least 44,000 times a second, and you get into CD quality audio. And it's considered high enough resolution to be basically perfect. And you get into 24-bit, which gives you even greater, like magnitudes, like greater precision with actually measuring how loud the frequency was when it was sampled. So the number of like the actual accuracy with which you're sampling, even within the same sample rate, is greater at 24-bit, just because you have a much more control over the actual amplitude. Anyway, this is pretty basic stuff. It's the way that PCM audio has always been done, like pulse code modulation, how the actual wave is in a process called, quantization, that where you literally take volume levels and frequencies and turn them into ones and zeros. And aptX works by looking at the frequency information, like the quantization information, after it breaks it down into 4 groups based on what frequency it is, because it uses a subband encoding. And then it looks at the differences between the signal information as it moves along, and instead of having to transmit the entire thing every single sample, it looks at the difference between sample like 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 and so on, and it actually can just transmit the difference. So it looks at it, well, here's the trajectory that the wave was going, here was the level it was at, here's where it ended up, this is where the wave would have had to be in between. And the graphics on the screen right now, if you're watching the video, is an example of how you can just transmit the difference and then have the codec on the receiving end put the whole thing back together again. So it's a very, very efficient way of sending the full PCM signal in a very small package, which is very important when you're dealing with something like Bluetooth, which is highly bandwidth restricted. So you can read really deeply into this if you want to. And like I said, I had some source links on there that'll go very far into it, performance analysis of it and the technical side of things. But ultimately, nothing none of this matters unless it actually makes a difference in how it sounds. And the version of aptX that I got to try out, because I asked for some test equipment, like loaner equipment. I didn't have anything that supported aptX. This is not something I would ever go out and buy. And I've always been a Bluetooth skeptic because I've heard Bluetooth. I had Bluetooth headphones 10 years ago and I thought they sounded pretty bad, but I used them to listen to like podcasts and things. But to hear something, to hear any kind of real difference, it takes like high quality headphones, a good quality source. And even though more phones going forward are going to support this, and obviously because Qualcomm owns aptX now, they can incorporate this into their audio DSP. They can have it right in the SoC, like in the Snapdragon processors themselves. So seemingly limitless number of phones could come out in the future that supports this. Right now, one of the few phones on the market, one of the few higher end phones is the LG G5. So I was loaned a G5 and a pair of these really, really nice Sennheiser Momentum 2 Bluetooth headphones that support aptX. They support the standard aptX. I will mention there's also an HD aptX and a low latency version of aptX. And the standard version, fine for basically CD quality stuff. And I was listening to CD rips in FLAC from the G5 just to test out the lossless stuff. And long story short, I have like a long description of like my different experiences listening and kind of my opinion of what compressed music sounds like to me. But the short version is that for complex music, for the most complex music I can find, where you have every single frequency basically being attacked at once, where you have bass, mid-range, very nuanced treble from like cymbals, and the kind of stuff that's very hard to compress at a very high quality, in a lossy way. That stuff sounded better to me with aptX, but I could still tell that there was some sort of compression going on. And the only way I could really describe it is it didn't sound like MP3. It just sounded a bit like the frequencies were kind of ending more abruptly than I was expecting. Like you have a lot of ringing harmonics and things going on, especially with a cymbal clash. That thing rings and rings, and it's very difficult to, I think, lossily compress that and have the natural decay of an instrument like that. But other than sounding a bit sterile, it sounded great. And then that was only when I was listening for it, and only when I was listening with very particular jazz tracks that I have found to be very hard to reproduce. And then in general, any kind of compressed stuff sounded exactly the same. I was using the 3.5 millimeter cable that came with it, listening to it with Bluetooth, without, and it pretty much sounded identical. It got to the point where I almost thought I was psyching myself out when I thought I could hear a difference. So for standard music listening, for the sources that I think a lot of people will actually be using on their phones, which are like 256 kilobit per second MP3s, Spotify, Apple Music. Of course, no Apple product supports aptX as of right now, so that's a moot point. But anything like a typical source, it to me makes a big difference to not recompress it using the same frequency domain compression. And I find it a very impressive technology, and it's a very interesting technology. It's not new. It's been around for a very long time. But this implementation of it works very well for the limitations of Bluetooth, basically. Have I talked enough?
Yes.
Probably not. I listened to about 60% of it, so probably not
Could
enough.
you go over that
Just
again?
In post,
paying
can you just
attention.
edit about 80% of that out?
Just compress it down.
Yeah, use time-based compression.
We'll just chop it
My-
down to about 2 minutes. It'll be good.
My apologies to the live viewers, but hopefully the podcast downloaders will hear a much shorter version of that nonsense.
All right, so you already know the question we're going to ask.
What?
In your research/testing, how do you think aptX compares to AAC over Bluetooth, which is Apple's answer to this stuff?
I haven't heard AirPods. I don't know.
I guess there aren't really many devices at all that support AAC over Bluetooth, which is kind of their weird Bluetooth codec.
Yeah, and subjectively, I think AAC sounds better than MP3. But is this their own? So this is their own codec then?
Yeah,
Is that what they're actually doing with the?
they're doing
earbuds?
AAC over Bluetooth at like a max of 250K is kind of
That
It's
would
pretty-
probably be excellent.
what
Yeah,
they say.
That should be pretty good at that bit rate.
Yeah, but again, you have to have it supported on like your headphones or your speakers or whatever, which I don't really, because I had to Google it to figure out what the heck they did, because I know they did something sort of special, but I couldn't remember,
I mean, 250 is a pretty high bit rate.
especially for AAC.
I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know
it-
if you came up across that.
I wonder if it
any of that in your
dynamically
research.
drops its bit rate, like as you know, you go, say you walk further away from the phone, so that it wouldn't be able to go 250.
Probably.
I would assume it
have to
drops.
I think as long as you're within, like, yeah, I guess that's a good point. Like the range thing as far as bandwidth goes, because they would have to scale it down. But
Yeah.
if anybody, like Apple certainly has the processing overhead to do that.
Oh, sure.
Like, if,
Yeah.
and their DSP can obviously handle, like, they
it
can
can handle variable
offload-
bit rate, so you know.
Yeah, like to even on the fly recompression is nothing for a modern SoC. Like if they're offloading the audio, so I imagine that for the kind of like standard like 256, AAC file. If they didn't have to transcode on the fly, that would sound fantastic. If
Yeah,
they're
that's-
able to just
The transcoding on the fly is actually the really big.
Yeah.
You know, once you second layer transcode something, it takes. There's been like studies on this. I forget like who the guy was, the famous guy. That,
I
like,
can't remember. Yeah, it's only if concatenation. I was reading about this.
Basically, it's like, you can only do one pass through a psychoacoustic thing and into a coda, even regardless of the bitrate, basically.
Yeah.
Like once you strip that back out or like decompress it and then recompress it to something else, or even if it's the same, even if you recompressed it to MP3 and it was MP3 in the first place and it was like 320 kilobit or something,
yeah.
there's like a significant step down when you go to that second one, because the psychoacoustic model that got applied, then
Oh, that must be Harry Seldon.
then the next layer that you tried to, redo that compression on, now that other stuff has been stripped out already.
Yeah.
And it has like a harder time,
It's kind of like re-aliasing a scene
kind of.
after you anti-aliased it.
Yeah. Basically,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually
Yeah.
a really good analogy.
I just realized that I actually linked to that CJ Dalton UKIB
Is that-
article.
that's the one.
Yeah. So that's in the article. It's on the second page. Recompressing the psychoacoustic compression with psychoacoustic compression is terrible.
Yeah.
And there's examples in the article of why he says that you can actually create errors and distortion by doing this. So if Apple's doing it straight, like if they have their own way of just sending the 256 signal using AAC compression to the AirPods, then fantastic. They'll sound as good as anything.
As good as the
But-
drivers in the AirPods.
Right.
It would be
Which-
good if there
that's
was
the other
a-
thing. You're limited to that driver design,
Yeah.
that brand, and only, I imagine you can only use it with an iPhone. And if you could use it with anything else, you're certainly not getting that
Yeah.
capability out of it. You'd be using SBC again, the standard Bluetooth audio protocol.
I know there have been talks in the past about some ways to have like a type of compression where you can actually strip bits off and you're not transcoding. You're just, this was back in like the Real Media days or whatever, is when there was a bunch of talk about this. Like you can just have, dynamically, the server just has like one set of data. That's the content that it's trying to stream. And then it can just like somehow dynamically strip some portion of that stream away. And you end up with like the lower bitrate version.
Yeah.
Which would be amazing for this, right? Because then theoretically, you'd be like as close as you could to the original without having to do a transcode. And even if you, had to sacrifice and go at a lower bitrate to something.
I think that's very close to the idea of aptX, which is you break down the audio signal, you look at the lower, medium, and high frequencies, and you say, well, these frequencies need more data to appear high resolution, and these need less. And then you basically encode appropriately for the frequency, and then when it's sent off to the other side, using this sort of predictive, like ADPCM is what they're actually using, adaptive.
Pulse code modulation.
Yeah, differential pulse code modulation. And you're looking at the difference between the signals and their amplitude and frequency, and doing this on a subband level at different quality levels, basically different bit depths. And it's complicated, but it makes the most sense to me for doing something on the fly. For myself, I listen to FLAC files if I want compression on the go, but that's with wired headphones. And without a proprietary solution like Apple's, or Sony has their own proprietary solution that's very high quality, but you have to have like one of the Sony digital Walkmans, you have to have one of the Sony wireless headphones, and now you're into, hundreds, if not well over $1,000 for a dedicated digital audio player and wireless headphones to go with it. And at that point, I think that's kind of defeating the purpose of wireless to begin with. If you're going dedicated, I almost feel like you might as well go wired. If you're using your smartphone, you want better quality audio over a wireless connection. And the same would go for your in-car audio.
Yes, that was going to be my next question.
You know what? I had a chance to talk to the aptX guys a little bit, and that was one of the things I brought up, was in-car audio experience. To me, that is as big of a deal as getting better wireless performance. If more and more phones going forward follow Apple's approach and make slimmer, more water-resistant designs that omit a headphone jack entirely, then yes, it's going to become vital to have some sort of high-quality Bluetooth audio experience. You want it to be universal, so Bluetooth seems to make sense, rather than going with some sort of proprietary connection. But the in-car thing, like, how great would it be to be able to just get into a car, pair up your device, and now you're not dealing with just standard Bluetooth audio quality, you're dealing with what sounds like you're plugging it into like a good quality, like aux in, and getting like, full CD quality sound wirelessly. You don't have to connect your phone to anything. So
can you tell when that phone has negotiated aptX? Is there any way, like because it's Android, is there like any software way to see what codec it's using?
I didn't get into, I didn't install anything to try to find out. Like, I wondered about that, because when you're actually setting it up and pairing the device, it does not show this.
Because I believe my car supports aptX from some light Googling, so we might have to try that at some point. If we can figure out a way to make sure, like, to actually see what's negotiating, that could be an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we should probably move on. Got some stories.
All right, next up. That FSB Twins power supply we talked about last week, I think.
The twins, huh?
The twins.
You grab the twins and you pull them out of the box. You know what I'm saying?
Just yank on the handles. Yes. So what this is an ATX form factor power supply that happens to also check the box of being dual redundant power supplies into like a hot swappable kind of cage deal there. Pretty cool idea. They make a 500 watt version, 700 watt version. I think Lee tested the 500 watt version.
Yep, he did.
I mean, looks like pretty good overall package. Our fear from last week looks like it has come up, because near the end of the article, it gets into the sound performance, which is pretty much where I directly jumped to. And at the back of these power supplies is the dreaded 40 millimeter fans.
Oh yeah, they're even deeper than normal too.
Yeah, they're really.
I think it's on the detailed look.
Yep, they're the kind of chunky ones.
40 millimeter fans have gotten a lot better.
They are better.
10 years.
And they do throttle in this.
And now that I've been beating myself in the head with a stick for 10 years, it's been getting better too.
Yeah, so they are variable speed in this implementation. So if the power supply is not putting out a lot of power, then, they're relatively quiet. But I think Lee described them as getting to the point of annoying, or words to that effect, as he ramped up the power output. So Yeah.
Oof. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I
There
mean,
was one neat trick it did. If you flip back to the page you were on with the efficiency.
yeah.
So it turns out that when they say it's 80 plus gold, it's actually for a 230 watt server room. So if you scroll up a bit,
You mean
you
230
did
volt?
find that, or sorry, 230 volt. You did find that at 100% at 100% load, these things were actually like that's a normal power supply efficiency curve. See how it dips down towards the end? Scroll up a bit and look at these guys. They kept getting more and more and more efficient. So by the time they hit 100% load at the normal current that we test at, it was actually finally meeting the 80 plus gold that they claimed.
Interesting.
So it's not wrong. It's a little misleading, but it's not wrong. It's just, I looked at that and I went, Lee? And he's like, nope, I double checked this because it just looks utterly and completely wrong. So there you go. It's definitely got a lot of server DNA in it because it either wants 230 volts or it wants, I bought the power supply that's going to be at 100% load 90% of the time because I didn't want to waste money. It's a little weird.
All right. Other than that, it looked good. And it's a cool idea.
If you need.
Oh,
this
and they've got
power
a
Yeah.
limiter in there. So the 12 volt is actually 3 rails, but it goes through a hardware limiter and becomes 1 rail. So if you ever do get that horrible crossover that you never want to have happen, it actually literally can't push more than what it's rated for on your 12 volt rails. Probably a damn good idea.
All right. Questions on that one? Going, gone? No. All right. Next.
Next.
What's next? Me.
All right, I'll be back in an hour.
Micron 5100 Max and Eco Enterprise SSDs. There's also a Pro in the middle there, but they didn't sample that one to review. We got the 1 terabyte Max and the 2 terabyte Eco model. These are Enterprise SSDs using Intel 3D NAND. They are all in TLC mode. Straight TLC. No caching, no SLC, nothing. Okay? So wrap your head around that for a minute and imagine how slow you would think that they would go. However, when you get to the results, which I guess we could say start with just the first saturated IOPS on the...
Isn't it because there's so damn many chips in there that...
No, they're rated pretty high, even for the smaller capacities. Even for the Eco 480 gig, which is only like 10% over provisioned, which is similar to... Actually, if you scroll up a little bit on that page, just go to the specs, which is like a chart that's right there. Yeah. Like, the throughputs and the IOPS, I mean, it's still respectable even for, a half a terabyte model. If you just go to the 1 terabyte Eco, you're basically, you're saturating SATA there with TLC flash. So pretty good. And not only that, but you're doing it across the whole span of the drive. These are enterprise drives. They're designed for random access across the whole, however much capacity they have. So
how come it goes lower from 480 gig through the 3840 with IOPS?
probably because of a larger table to do lookups. In other words, there's a translation layer, right? So,
so that's kind of the opposite of what we've seen in many of these controllers that have multi-sized amounts of 3D NAND, or their XLC or whatever the hell they want to call it.
it is also possible that they're provisioning even lower, like their over provisioning is even less at the higher capacities. Intel is known for doing that in their enterprise models. You can still tweak it. In that, like, there is a tool that Micron provides that lets you change the over provisioning, but you can only go in the higher over provisioning direction, in other words, less available capacity. Anyway, so if you go down to that 4K random there, that's that first chart. I've put green X's on the chart there for what their rating is versus what the drive actually did. So yes, Josh, there were low ratings there, looked like relatively low, but you could tell for the rights, which is on the left side of the table there, it actually outperformed its spec by a pretty decent margin. So I think Micron might have just been speccing those for like your worst case right IOPS. In other words, if say just things really got fragmented and then you were trying to come back with a, say you did like 2K random to it for a while or something because of your workload, and then you tried to come back at 4K random, you might for a while end up at the lower IOPS level. Micron is basically just super conservative in their specs here. I would skip straight to the next page.
You would, but
yeah.
I would.
Straight to the next page, which is where some of the magic really starts happening here with this thing. So if you go down to the first chart, which is right there, which is our high resolution QoS. So the quality of service is just basically how consistent all of the IOs are, right? And basically, for the most part, these guys are just vertical lines. Even on this kind of a table, which is exponentially, like inverse exponentially reaching 100%, right? It's going to various numbers of nines on the climb up. So typically you'll see things start to level off and turn right at the end there. These just continue to go vertical until they fall off the scale. And even if I expanded that scale out to like 7 or 8 nines, they're still going vertical until they just end because they just ran out of IOs to chart. So in other words, there's no tail latency to these. There's no IOs that just kind of like fall off. These drives are extremely, extremely consistent to the point where almost none of the IOs during the entire course of the test fell beyond like something like 2 milliseconds or something like that. And I'm talking like during preconditioning, during changing workloads, during all that time, I like went through the percentiles front to back of the whole suite, which is like a day worth of testing. And to not have a single IO go past a couple of milliseconds is pretty insane. Even on this model, which is Eco, which is, again, almost client drive level of over provisioning, like really small amount of OP. Then where can we go here? I'm plotting things a little bit differently for some folks. There were people had a hard time trying to read the nines charts and see where the lines cross the various places. So if you go to, I think it's like the third chart down. Yeah, that one right there. That'll work. So that's just showing you the crossover points at all of the various QDEVs. So if you wanted to know how many microseconds in this case, where the crossovers were for the various numbers of nines, they're right there. And I have that those blue X's on that chart there are supposed to be the QDepth 1. In other words, the bottom blue line on that chart just needs to be below those. And actually that X that's on the right that I just kind of put at the top of the, like beyond the top of the chart, is actually, the number is actually, I think, 9,000, not like 1,400, which you might think it is, just because I just ran out of chart space, basically. So well below their specs. And just as an example, I didn't have the comparisons done in time to put in this review, but even like Micron's own previous generation SATA enterprise parts exceed these specs. Like, in other words, their prior gen, just like a year ago, was way worse, in fact, than what the specs are for this drive, which this drive, it just, kills as far as being super below those latency specs. So that's just an insane amount of consistency. Insanely good consistency for an enterprise part, or for any part for that matter. If you go down a couple more charts, there's not a new thing we threw in there. Yeah, that one will work. So what we're looking at there is something else new that we're doing. I tried this with the Micron 9100 review where I was trying to compare two different SSDs, and I decided to issue a paced workload. In other words, don't just saturate the thing all day long, because that's not practical, because that's not how they're actually operating in a server. Usually there's some amount of load on the SSDs in a server that's not just take the thing to the maximum queue depth all day long. So in this case, I'm doing a ramp of IOs per second. So I just step up by 10,000 IOPS incrementally, and then I look at what all those QoS figures look like on the way up. So what you'll end up seeing is that for the most part, when you're at the lower levels of load, the consistency gets even tighter. In other words, those lines on the 9s chart from the beginning we were talking about would be even more vertical. So just, different kind of stuff we're looking at in this review. The pricing of these guys comes in at, the Eco models are 45 cents a gig, Pro is 52 cents a gig, Max is 59 cents a gig. Dirt cheap for enterprise parts, especially considering the Max, the over-provisioning on the Max, which has even better consistency and even higher IOPS capability, like to the point where it's almost saturating SATA on 4K random. That thing has like something like 60% over-provisioning, and it only came up at like 31% more cost than the Eco. So like you're getting 50% more flash on the product, even though you can't access that 50% more flash. It's just the end result of it is to give you better performance, right? Pretty interesting to see enterprise parts coming out like super, super cheap like this. And Intel did that same thing with the 3520 series that we reviewed a few months back, which was an NVMe PCIe part that they were selling for, it was in the order of like 55 cents a gig or 60 cents a gig or something like that for an NVMe, PCIe part with really, really high performance. And both of these guys boil down to their 3D TL or their 3D eMLC or eTLC, depending on how they implement it from company to company. But that 3D stuff is definitely paying off, at least for Intel and Micron, especially when it comes to cost-effective enterprise parts. Because 45 cents a gig, you're getting pretty close to consumer SSD pricing there in cost per gig. Pretty good stuff. Anyway, questions on that? Yes, no, maybe?
Not really.
All right. Nobody likes enterprise SSDs. Fine.
They're fascinating, but it just
No one will buy one for me.
Yeah.
Oh, no one will.
It's difficult.
Well, okay, so on that note, and I don't have this like strictly from Micron in a statement, but on the Intel side, Intel designs their firmwares for enterprise so that if something goes a little bit sideways in the firmware, it auto detects it itself and then bricks the SSD, like on purpose. Because if you're managing an enterprise, you don't want to troubleshoot an intermittent fault somewhere in your rack space of thousands of parts, right? And Jeremy can back that up, right?
Perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
You just put the sticky note on the SSD that says "works?" question mark?
Yeah, or this might be going out, and then you put your sticky note with the password right next to it. No, so you want them to do that. Now, I'm pretty sure Micron probably subscribes to the same kind of methodology. So regardless of how cheap these are, I don't buy one off of eBay and try to put your OS on it and then have that be the only copy of your important stuff.
Well, just in general, but
yeah, that too. Just don't rely on it to that level because now, granted, these are tested. The idea is these should have better reliability than consumer parts, but the thing is, it's always possible that something's going to break, right? And I have personally put an Intel Enterprise SATA SSD into a cert mode. Thank goodness it didn't have anything important on it that I didn't have another copy of. But that was just it just became an 8 gigabyte SSD with a label that actually had a cert written in the drive volume label or the product ID. And I was like, oh. So that's what
how
that
it
is.
happens.
So that's how that works. I mean, it goes it painful so if you were managing enterprise, you would just see that you'd pull up your your data across your enterprise and you'd see oh, this drive has been replaced by an assert drive.
And then you'd go
Yep, and then you jank it out, put another one in, and then you'd be, off to the races again. Anyway, so yeah, just remember, client drives kind of have a purpose here. Anyway, we don't have a Mori, but we do have a gigabit LTE, the path to 5G with Qualcomm, Ericsson, Netgear, and Telstra. Article.
Hello, welcome to Telstra.
Is that what that is? I've never heard that.
It's
that's the Australian telco.
Oh. All right, well, who read this one? Because
They suck.
I unfortunately did not read this.
All telcos suck.
Yeah, no, Telstra's got a special place in my heart, and every Australian is sure. I'm also sure. It's 4GX. It's not quite 5G because, well, they're not IEEE, so they don't get to say that it's 5G. And right now, we don't really know what 5G is going to be. But I mean, the long story short of it is that when Maury did the tests, it was crazy. He was looking at, and I'm just trying to bring up that page now, 930 megs down and 94 up on a cell phone connection.
The up is pretty funny at that point.
I wish I could get that here in Canada on my bloody broadband.
Exactly.
That would be nice. It's interesting, and it looks a little bit more reliable. They bring up some like just basic task manager, file transfer display, and it's significantly faster and isn't quite as wobbly as you might see. They also put Netgear got into it because they've got a brand new router, the Nighthawk M1 mobile router, which is our friend the Snapdragon 835 SoC in it, and will essentially allow just about anything you've got to connect to this 4GX signal if you could get a 4GX signal. It's also got some MIMO tricks to it, which Sebastian might be able to go into deeper if he's come back. But essentially what they're saying is that they've got banding with 2x60 megahertz with 4x4 MIMO, or 2x80 megahertz without 4x4 MIMO, which is an interesting way to aggregate, but we'll sort of see how that works. And they've also got a new implementation of CAM, which is 256, so 8-bit. We're all still sitting on 6-bit.
Yeah. It's not just the CAM or QAM, however it's pronounced, support, and the fact that it's using that you can't get these kind of speeds without carrier aggregation, and you can do that a number of different ways. I know that Qualcomm has talked about different methods in the past. You can have unlicensed spectrum usage. You can have multiple like LTE bands concurrently with MIMO. That first slide shows like 2x 60 megahertz or 2x 80 megahertz aggregation. So you have to have, you can't use this with older hardware either. I saw something in the chat about that. You have to have a compatible modem, the Snapdragon X16 modem.
Which is on how many phones right now?
Right. So
yeah.
If the next generation of flagship Snapdragon powered phones offer support for this, and you're in an area with compatible networks and you can aggregate and you know, then you could potentially get to this. Obviously they're showing a best case scenario with this, but it is kind of where this is going. This is one implementation of it. Like you said, it's not really 5G because there is no ratified 5G, but 4GX, you know, enhanced backhaul 4G, kind of like the same stuff that happened back in the 3G era would be nice. You know, when we had like enhanced backhaul HSTPA plus, where phones were getting up to like, what was it, like 70 plus megabit at that point.
Yeah, on a good day.
Yeah. Even before LTE was in place very much, but it's very interesting stuff. I love the idea, the progress going forward. I would love to have, you know, gigabit at home, but I can't even get that. So if I could just get it on my phone, screw Spectrum. Who needs it? I get Ethernet for the first mile to my phone, or just straight up fiber to my phone, wireless fiber.
The thing that I find amusing out of all of this is the rumors we've seen about the Snapdragon 835 and how Samsung is hoarding all of them so it isn't in flagship phones. Yet there's this one Netgear router that they're going to sell to like 10 people in Australia that they're making with the 835 in it, which is obviously just like a Qualcomm deal. Like they partnered on this. Like, we got to get you some chips, but you won't be able to buy it in a non-Samsung smartphone for a while, probably.
Yeah, like
And
And if it doesn't work, no one's going to Oz to check.
Yeah, right.
I'm assuming what Samsung did with their Galaxy S8 is just take up the bulk of the like mass production. Maybe they did some like smaller volume runs for Netgear, but yeah, if you're into this and live in an area where you can get at this kind of network speed, then you're probably going to want to get the latest Samsung phone at least in the first few months.
All right.
Sure.
Next. Looks like Josh.
AMD says,
Here's Josh.
go F yourself.
Really? They did?
Oh, I guess FY doesn't really
It
mean
does.
that in this case.
Fee yourself?
Fiscal year results.
2016
yourself?
times, please.
Yes. Go FY 260. Yeah, exactly. Nicely done, Jeremy. Anyway, AMD announced results, yesterday or the day before? Can't remember which. Even though I'm supposed to. It's been a long day. What can I say? But anyway, they didn't make as much money as people were hoping, but they kind of made more money than people were expecting. So last quarter, they made about $1.39 billion in revenue. But a lot of that was the build up to the holiday season in APU, CPU, GPUs, and probably most importantly, their custom semi work, which included new products from Sony and Microsoft that they were, building up. So they had a pretty good quarter there in terms of revenue, but they had that wafer start agreement that they ended up paying something like $320 million to Global Foundries because they didn't meet the goals and expectations that they were contracted for. So this quarter, they were at 1.11 billion of revenue, but their loss was only 51 million, which when you kind of look at the overall thing, that's surprising, especially in light of how much they lost the quarter before, how much they've kind of lost throughout the entire year, and where their revenue stack has been going. So they have some things working against them. In Q4, their revenue from custom semi dropped dramatically, and that makes a lot of sense because Microsoft and Sony, they want to build up for the holiday season, so they order a lot of parts in Q2 and Q3 to get that all running and make sure that they have all the products in place, because the lead time on these products are tremendously longer than what we see on just CPUs, motherboards, video cards. Consoles are it takes a quarter longer to be able to get things going so they can address certain market times. So in Q4, that all dropped off because Sony and Microsoft don't want to have a bunch of extra inventory in place when Q1 rolls around. So they cut it back pretty dramatically. However, CPUs, GPUs, they were okay. GPUs were stronger. AMD has done well on the budget and mid-range with the RX 460, 470, and 480. Those are all sub $250 products. It's a nice price performance combination for them. It's comparable to what NVIDIA has with their 1050, 1060s. And again, that's kind of the meat of the market, because not everybody can afford a $400 graphics card, much less a $600 one. And so AMD is competing well there. But what they are bullish on, of course, is the upcoming next 2 quarters. In the talk that they had, they disclosed that Zen or Ryzen will be released in a March timeframe. We expect that to be somewhat early March, but we don't have an exact time yet. Vega, their high-end graphics products, will be released sometime in second quarter. Officially it's a first half 2017 product, but it's not making it here anytime in January, February, March. So we can see that in at least middle second quarter to possibly beginning of June. Who knows? But these are things that will materially impact the bottom line of AMD, because it has now been how many years since Vishera came out as the top end CPU for the desktop? That was what, 2011, 2012? Kind of
2012.
amazing.
5 years easily.
October 2012.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's kind of insane. 4.5 years.
Yeah.
That many people who bought an 8350 at that time are still running an 8350. Talk about bang for the buck.
Something like that, I guess.
Something unless, of
like
course,
that.
you don't like to play games at the highest possible frame rate with the very latest video cards. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. They did okay. I think, I've got a lot of faith in this management team. They've kind of took them through thick and thin. Well, okay, this management team has only had thin to deal with. But a couple of quarters ago, they had something like 700 million of cash on hand. Well, even with losses and this wafer start agreement and all these other little things that happen, they've been able to increase that to 1.26 billion. So even if they don't make a whole lot of money in the next couple of quarters, they've got a pretty good cushion to take care of them. And that's kind of a positive thing to get all this from here. And when we look at when March comes rolling around, not only are there going to be new CPUs, but they've been selling chipsets to create the motherboards. And really just, it's going to be a good time for enthusiasts and mid-range guys. I don't have any official information, but we expect to have at least, the top-end CPU, which is going to help margins tremendously. If they can ship a decent amount of product, they're going to have a good quarter. But again, it all depends on a lot of expenses. But we'll see. I think, 2017 is kind of a make or break year. But from what we have seen already, they have the tools in place to be able to be successful and at least get back in the black again.
We can only hope.
We can.
Hopefully AC/DC plays when they do.
Yeah. Then they won't be in the black anymore. They'll be in the red.
They'll be back
Yeah.
in black.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're going to have some balls jiggling
Because they've got the biggest.
to the left and the right. Yeah.
All right, let's get into the news.
You guys have been waiting a long time to use those lines, haven't you?
Long
Yeah,
time.
the gate's chopping you.
I pull them out anytime I can.
Boo.
No.
Pioneer announced first UHD Blu-ray optical drives.
Josh considers upgrading his Laserdisc.
These are PC drives.
Yeah. So wait, what is
didn't
different?
actually think we'd see these.
Is it different? Like,
It's a different spec for UHD Blu-rays.
There is
Yeah,
one
4K Blu-ray,
very
man.
important difference between these and a standard Blu-ray drive.
which is
Encryption support
okay.
or decryption support.
All right. So they needed some extra special secret sauce, whatever.
Yeah, the actual stack, to get UHD Blu-ray working is pretty intense. It uses AACS2 encryption. You have to have a drive that actually has AACS2 enabled on it. I assume on the chipset in the actual drive, because the only media that's out there right now is double and triple layer Blu-ray media, as far as I know, and a BDXL compatible drive, which you can already buy, supports technically the reading of those discs. There has been no significant change to Blu-rays just because they're UHD. They're just using more layers when needed to avoid having to have multi-disc films with special features and whatnot. But the actual getting it working is something that just you can't apparently do with a standard drive. And I actually, in looking into this news post, I was thinking, well, what if you just got a replacement drive for an Xbox One S? Because you can find those on eBay for like $60. And that's a UHD Blu-ray player, right? But find software that will actually understand and decrypt this, since I don't believe AACS2 has been decrypted yet, has been broken yet. So basically, you're stuck with this. You buy this Pioneer drive, which you can't buy here yet. It was announced for availability in Japan, I believe in March, or maybe it's the end of this month. And if it comes here, then you'll be spending, what was it? About $200 for the base one, and there's a $300 version, which has some enhanced audio stuff. But the basic one, $200, and a bundled version of Power DVD that, even though it was listed in the press release as Power DVD 14, Power DVD 14 is 2 versions old, and not even Power DVD 16 supports UHD playback. So I'm not sure if they have their own build of it that's been provided, or if that was just a typo. But you're going to have to use, just particular software with this drive, and your GPU has to have HDMI 2.0A with HDCP 2.2 support, and the driver has to support AAC S2. You have to have this supported monitor, so basically a current 4K TV that has HDCP 2.2 support, or you get into all of these requirements. And at that point, why don't you just get a dedicated UHD Blu-ray player, which you can get for far less? The problem is people want to rip these UHD Blu-rays, and that isn't possible yet.
Yeah. Is there, what PC can you do this on? All of these requirements.
Well, I mean, you need to buy an external adapter because you don't have any optic or 5.5 or 5.25 inch ports.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about.
I think if you just built a new Intel system, aren't the Kaby Lake? Don't they?
I believe you are correct.
So you'd have to have Kaby Lake so you can have AACS.
And you have to use Windows 10. So build a new computer, use Kaby Lake, get Windows 10. You don't even need an external GPU at that point.
You won't be able to use Zen because
get a new monitor.
SGX, right? So that'll be out of the way. You won't be
Well,
able to do
and then
that.
sit quietly and wait for someone to release something that actually has this.
In fact, I don't think that's even an optional thing. I think you actually do have to use 7th gen Intel. Now that I'm looking at this again,
I don't think
a
there's
non-text
another
post
option.
on this kind of broke it down and basically said you have to use the newest architecture Intel processor. You have to use Windows 10. You have to have one of these drives or another one that supports the decryption. And you have to basically follow through the entire chain, all of these HTCP requirements. And then what? You can't just use Handbrake on this. You have to decrypt it first. You can't use DVD decryptor on this. You have to have something that has broken the encryption, which hasn't happened yet. So
Yeah.
Give
it's all early days.
Give it time.
It's-
Give it minutes.
I mean, the hardware has to exist for the support to come for everything, but
Yeah.
that's a tough list.
And you know what? A tougher list is looking at real or fake 4K. Google that. Look at the website, the simple list for that shows you on the left-hand column fake 4K, and on the right-hand column real or mostly real 4K. And most of the studio releases in UHD at this point are not even really 4K. They're upscales. Or when they are 4K, it's like, we did some of the stuff in 4K, but post-production was actually done in 2K, so the special effects are still at 2K, overlaid over 4K, film scans, and just, it's a mess. So the brand new movies that are shot in 4K and mastered in 4K, sure. And there are very few of them. So it's literally just like the very early days of Blu-ray, where half of the studio catalog titles that came out were DVD upscales and looked terrible and had no new special features and all of that good stuff.
Yep.
But you can do it.
But you can do it if you live in Japan and have $200.
Doesn't seem like
There's
a
a
bad
lot
trade-off
you
to
can
me.
do.
Things.
Well, we don't have Scott Michaud on, which is a shame, because he wrote up this thing about DirectX Intermediate Language announced via GitHub, which is pretty cool. And there's about 35 different acronyms that I've never heard of in that in that news post of his.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a little bit of this stuff. I think it's essentially kind of like a more general compute based thing that compiles down to DirectX bytecode.
I guess.
I-
I don't
I-
know. Microsoft published a DirectX shader compiler to GitHub. So
This
That
is
put-
good.
that's good, right? So that puts source out there for like
Well-
in this case the intermediate language bytecode, which is like how things talk through DirectX to the GPU, right? Like
Yes.
Yeah.
And how to effectively do that without breaking everything.
Yeah.
Or causing it to be incredibly slow.
right. So that's, good that knowledge is out there. I'm sure it'll lead to some other stuff other than what they intended, maybe even like
Like DirectX 12 support for wine.
possibly at
Hmm.
least shader support for wine, since it's the shader stuff that they
Oh, okay.
put out. I don't know if that's everything, right? That wouldn't constitute everything, right, Josh?
No, not everything.
But Wine
A lot of
2.0 is
stuff.
going to be a little bit better for it.
Yeah, it
Which
supports
just
DirectX
came out.
11.
Anyway, more on that. At
Yeah,
the, at
read
the site.
Scott's article on that. He's always really good with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So give it a read, digest it, and there you go.
Next up. This is Ken's favorite article. I think. Mr. Arduino Man.
Well, this isn't an Arduino.
I
This
know.
isn't a microcontroller. This is a Raspberry Pi competitor
I
from
know.
Asus.
I
Yep.
know.
Is it going to be like
That's-
$35?
That's interesting.
I think it's supposed to be in that ballpark. I think it's. Well,
56, $60.
yeah, that's a little
So-
expensive.
No,
What
60 or
is-
70. There you go.
Can I use it to break HTTP?
Yes, you can.
The model number is sadly too long for us to even say on the podcast, but it's from Asus. And it's what is the actual CPU on this board? Is it actually
Kyle is saying $65.
$65?
I think there's like two different SKUs.
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference is. So they're using a Rockchip SoC, which is 4 A17 cores, so 32-bit, unlike the Raspberry Pi 3, which went 64-bit. I mean, there's probably not a whole lot of advantage there for the type of stuff you use this for. CPUs collect at 1.8 gigahertz, and they're using Mali GPU that I'm not entirely sure about. But I
It's
think
a fancy new Mali one. It
Oh, yeah.
does 4K H264.
Huh.
Was it the G71?
T764?
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
It's the super low power version of it, I believe.
Yeah. So sort of the thing people have picked up on this is that it can do hardware accelerated decode of 4K H.264 and 10-bit H.265, which the Raspberry Pi definitely can't do.
And 2.25 watts playing back a 1080p video ain't nothing to sneer at.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. You gotta buy a bunch of new PC hardware to play back 4K HDR, but this little $65 thing might do it.
Probably not HDR.
You got it, sir.
No, it won't do HDR.
Okay.
However,
Well, I mean, if you say
True.
10-bit, and you say all those other
yeah,
things.
but that doesn't mean it supports the correct HDCP standard to do HDR, right?
I guess. Then
So
it'll just strip the HDCP out. It'll just be like,
yeah.
yeah.
The question I have is, what are you necessarily going to use this for? Because the majority of the 4K content that exists is streaming right now. And as we know, Netflix streaming on desktop only works on Kaby Lake. So it's certainly not going to work. It's not implemented in Linux, and it's not going to work on this board. That narrows down a lot of your content. So you're talking about native 4K content from something like Plex, but you can't rip UHD Blu-rays.
No.
So it's
Well-
kind of putting the cart before the horse. With this
Yeah, I mean, like
little,
the PR was saying it's running Debian and it uses Kodi.
I mean,
Which
you
and
could
I've actually
install
not used
Plex
Kodi
on it.
before, but I've heard it's
I mean,
decent.
Kodi is the
Have you ever
rebrand.
used a Xbox Media
Yeah.
Center?
What's an Xbox?
Okay.
Well,
Because
that was
Kodi is the rebranded
Yeah.
version of XBMC, right?
Oh, that makes more sense then.
So I mean, this thing is cool. It's a little pricey, but the bigger issue is there are a lot of competitors to the Raspberry Pi. There's like a bunch of stuff coming out of China, like the Orange Pi, and then there's the Odroid, which is they're usually more powerful than Raspberry Pi for about the same price, if not a little more. However, a lot of the issue I've run into with these things is support. Whereas there are a ton of Raspberry Pis out there, and there are only 3 models of them at this point. You get widespread support on things like the Debian, like the ARM version of Debian and Ubuntu will always support the Raspberry Pi because it's sort of the lead platform. Whereas it's not going to support these random kernels for the ASUS board with the Rock chip and Mali GPU in it. It's just not going to because not a lot of people are going to buy it necessarily. But that's how I feel, at least. I mean, people could be, I'm looking at the chat, they might be a little more open about that, but it's just, I know people who bought these Raspberry Pi competitors, and they're just like, the software support's pretty awful and stuff.
There is a massive community behind Raspberry Pi, so it's hard to ignore that.
Yeah. And for good reason. I mean, for $35 you get a quad-core, I think the Pi 3 is quad-core 64-bit ARM CPU with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in. They'll do just about anything you need a little hobbyist single-board computer to do.
Emulation.
Yeah, very, very good for emulation. You don't need an NES Classic. Just get a Raspberry Pi and have someone 3D print you a NES case, and there you go.
And have them 3D print a cable that's longer than 32 inches.
Ah, you get that sexy Bluetooth controller you got.
Exactly. I have the NES.
8-bit
Was it the NES Classic where they found like the byte for byte copy of the ROM from the underground on the frickin'?
Yeah.
I think it was on the Virtual Console.
I know they did on the Wii Virtual
Oh,
Console.
yeah,
I
it was
don't
the Wii
know if it's
Virtual
appeared
Console.
in other places.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it literally had the emulation header in it. Like,
which, to be fair, Nintendo could have ripped it using those tools because those tools are more accessible. They could have ripped the ROM
that's
themselves and not just downloaded it.
That's true.
But
did look kind of shady.
it does seem shady.
Anyway. Next up, Toshiba plans to spin off its storage business, sell 20% of the new company. Gee, if only there was a name of a storage business that they could
use.
that they could use and call this if they spun it off of themselves.
But would they bring back in Ryan Peterson?
No, I don't see that happening.
Did he ever make it
He'd
back
write
into the
lots of
country?
Nice little
He
notes
is not
for
in the
reviewers.
country. As a matter of fact, for a good
Weird.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just say he's probably not coming back in the country. Anyway, ZDNet reported this. Toshiba's in a financial bind because of losses from acquisitions and its Westinghouse division. Now, I feel bad saying this, but I'm a little bit tickled that Westinghouse is losing Toshiba money because there was a big stink back in the day when Toshiba
He might have been
Toshiba bought Westinghouse.
familiar with.
Yeah, that Toshiba bought Westinghouse.
Yeah,
and
nuclear
suddenly
submarines and cavitationalists. Yeah.
very low cavitation screws, propellers of submarines, and suddenly you had a non-U.S. company owning the machine to make those propellers for submarines. Yeah. Anyway.
I don't know. I had a super cheap Westinghouse TV, and it served me great.
Yeah. I mean, they made okay TVs, you know. Yeah. Anyway.
A
So
cooler class.
basically, Toshiba's in a bind, right? And they're like, we're low on money, and we got to do something. So they're going to spin off their storage business. This is a storage business that they recently, well, they had some storage business already. They were already making flash. But then they acquired OCZ. This was what, like 2 years ago now?
2 or 3.
Something like that. So they acquired OCZ, and now all of a sudden, OCZ got kind of a boost there because they were able to get their flash, at cost, basically. Like, it was from their own company at that point. Which was
And
good.
sadly, they sold it for below cost, but
Well,
that's a different story.
Well, anyway, so now they're gonna spin it off again. I don't know that they're gonna call it OCZ.
That can't even possibly be successful, right?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean,
No.
Does
Depends on how
Toshiba
it
make
is
hard
run.
drives?
Here's the thing,
Still?
they
Didn't they make hard drives at some point?
one of the reasons that OCZ was so easily acquired from Toshiba, remember they were going
They're
they were
hemorrhaging money.
no, they were
Yes.
like on their way to being like non-existent.
Yeah.
And they were saved by Toshiba. And one of the reasons they were on their way to being non-existent was because they were one of the companies trying to make SSDs without a direct supplier of flash. They had to deal with trying to get flash from all the companies that were out there.
Sure. But I mean, I don't think the OCZ acquisition has necessarily helped either party.
No, I don't think so either. But I just what I fear worse is that now if they spin OCZ back off, then it might just evaporate, right? Because it was going to evaporate before. Now what happens if you spin them off? Now they're having to buy.
They're probably weaker than they were before they got bought. To be honest,
I mean,
as a brand.
if they assuming they would spin the flash off with them, which would be okay,
maybe
right? If the whole storage thing goes, it's supposed to be all of the storage stuff and also image sensors. Because it's fab involved thing,
so
right? The fab's probably making the sensors too.
Yeah. How many third parties use Toshiba Flash? Like if you open an SSD, well, I guess
it's toggle mode. Anytime you hear about toggle mode,
yeah, but is
Flash.
that I know that was a
out
thing
there.
a few years ago, but is that really?
Yeah, it's still there.
Okay.
I mean, it's
it's still there.
Yeah, it is still there. It's kind of dipped a little bit because we're waiting on BICS, which is their 3D. And it's not a thing yet. Like we've talked about it and stuff, and it's supposed to be coming, but they're just not all the way ramped up on production on it yet. That will be good for them when it happens. It just hasn't happened yet, right? I mean, even at CES, they were like, I went and visited OCZ, and we didn't write anything about OCZ because I went there and they were like, we're waiting on BICS. Like we can't, there's nothing. They had a product line, but it was everything we'd already covered.
Yeah.
Right? There was nothing new.
That's always a rough CES appointment.
Yeah. I mean, they're basically just like, sorry, we can't launch anything yet. Like we're waiting on this 3D stuff. So anyway, yeah. I mean, it's possible that once their 3D does come out, it would be good for Toshiba's storage part as well as OCZ as the side thing for them because they would, potentially have. Relatively cheap. Like the 3D stuff that's what 3D is bringing everybody, right? It's low cost.
So, I mean, do you think there's a possibility that Toshiba just sells that business to someone and doesn't necessarily spin it all? Like they spin it off into something they sell someone, like Western Digital or Seagate or someone like that.
Well,
who's looking for a bit of a flash boost and just trying to keep buying everyone possible.
I don't know. Western Digital's not game anymore because they have SanDisk now, and SanDisk has their own flash.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Kingston.
Kingston couldn't afford it. I
don't know.
Kingston's one of those companies that has a lot of money that you never think about.
I think Kingston could afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kingston's like the last big company that's doesn't have their own in-house flash. That's for SSDs. If you think about it, right?
Where's my Bigfoot NVMe controller?
Well, it wouldn't be Bigfoot. It would be SanDisk, kind of, but not. God, that's such a confusing, convoluted thing.
Everyone bought everyone.
Like they had SanDisk and then SandForce. They had SandForce, and then SandForce went to LSI, and then LSI sold it to SanDisk.
I think there's an intermediate.
And then SanDisk got bought by Western Digital.
Yeah.
But I think some of the people that originally worked on the thing are still at OCZ.
No, but SandForce is not Bigfoot, guys.
Who's
okay?
Bigfoot was IndieLinks.
What?
IndieLinks.
Oh yeah, that's a name I haven't thought about.
But there were IndieLinks guys that went to SandForce. There's really
OCZ
not.
bought up IndieLinks.
Seagate and SandForce.
I will tell you this.
Enron-like.
I will tell you this straight up: that whoever IndieLinks guys remained at OCZ, I think were at least partly responsible for the Tryon. Yeah. Okay.
The shell company's interbreeding is almost Enron-like.
The Tryon
I'm
SSDs,
sure if we could actually trace it back, there's 2 companies now that are actually doing NAND.
The Tryon SSDs are personally responsible for me developing new tests to show problems with SSDs. So if that tells you where their controller design guys were at.
I figured it out. Seagate still owns SandForce, so if Toshiba sells their flash division to Seagate, Toshiba sells the flash division to Seagate, they could get the gang back together. be OCZ and Sandforce, and they could just be one happy
Oh,
family.
it was Seagate that. Yeah.
Do we need to get the whiteboard out?
Almost.
But the chalice of the
No,
palace
we
has
need
the
pieces
brew
of
that is
paper and
true.
pins and strings.
NAND flash.
I mean, yeah, that is really just a huge mess. But anyway, so they're possibly going to get spun off, and then
We
it's
shall
a
see.
shame because after they get spun off, presumably, is when their 3D stuff comes out, which would be the thing that actually kind of saves the storage side of them. So I don't understand why they're doing like a dump and run. I don't know.
Pump and dump.
No, not a pump and dump. It's like the opposite. Anyway, all right.
If only it was like 5-6 years ago when things were so much more non-confusing. You just didn't want to buy a J Micron controller. A Sandforce was good. The Indie-Links at the time was a big step up from J Micron, and the Intel was pretty darn good, except you were limited on writes.
And then we
what's so
figured out
funny-
the reliability of Sandforce 2 controllers.
There was
Yeah.
not just the reliability, but the funnier thing was that the way that we test now compared to the way that we tested then,
Makes them look like garbage.
oh, they look horrible.
because
the
they were doing
QDEF
heavy compression stuff, right?
Well, it wasn't just the compression. Sandforce had a really long pipeline within their controller from the time you requested something till the time it made it to the flash, and then it had to go back, right?
yeah.
And so low Q depth performance is just horrible, like really, really horrible. And like as it turns out, one of the slowest SSDs we have here, not NVMe, since Josh was asking for NVMe, but AHCI, but a PCI SSD was the Revo 350.
They had like 4 of those controllers.
The Revo
didn't they?
Drive 350 with 4 of those controllers on it is the slowest SSD in our latency percentile results.
That's funny.
It's like I think it's actually like just a couple of notches above an X25M,
Nice.
which was SATA 2
Yeah.
and limited to 80 meg per second. So anyway, yeah, let's just move on.
Maybe one day we'll figure it out.
One day we'll figure it out. Living Dangerously, delitting your 7700K.
Sebastian.
No, it's just
No, Maury.
yeah, that's my,
I
It's
have
a
never
personal
deleted a
story directed at Maury.
yeah, that story is kind of directed at Maury.
There's a first time for everything, Sebastian. I think you should give it a shot.
Why don't you
Does
3D print me one of these
I'll
things and maybe I
3D
will.
print you the crap out of one of these
Is this the
things.
thing you use to put the razor blade into the side of the thing? Is that what this?
I don't know if this is the razor blade method or if this is
I think
the
you pop
mallet
it.
method.
I wanna say it's mallet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh God, seriously?
Which would be great.
Yeah. This is just like the jig
it's-
that someone designed so you can set the CPU in
Yeah.
there.
It's precision cut. I mean, look,
It's precision percussive maintenance.
I see.
But yeah,
do I need to like heat it
and
up or anything first, or you just like put it in there and just start wailing away on it with
I'm
a
just
hammer?
I think you just kind of put it in there and start whirling away with it
Oh
with
God,
the rubber mallet.
that's.
Yes, Kyle, I think I linked you in this one as well.
And you wonder.
Yes, I did. Because you guys actually got serious results. It dropped from 90 something to 68 degrees when you replaced the TIM. So it is worth it in a way. I once again, Intel may not have gone with the absolute best thermal interface material inside of that.
Why not? They can afford it. They're
They
running
don't
at
have to.
63% margins.
Do you understand profit margin, Josh?
They can just
I do
toss something in
understand.
there, Josh. It's fine.
They're probably putting toothpaste in there by now just to cut down the cost.
No, toothpaste actually worked better
Probably.
than that. So did the Cheese Whiz.
Yeah, bubble gum.
But-
There's a dude on the line just
Yeah.
chewing gum and just sticking it in the under the.
On the other hand, there's one thing, and I actually had an interesting discussion, strangely, in the comment section on the website of someone who was pointing out something that I haven't heard from an AMD rep or an Intel rep in a long time, which is don't use the damn paste. Use the TIM we provide you because that paste is brilliant for 6 to 8 months, maybe a year. Then it needs to be replaced.
Really?
For most people, that doesn't matter because if you're using it, you're usually upgrading your CPU or just ripping things apart.
If
and
you're
tearing it
delating a
apart.
CPU, a year is probably a long time to have your system put together enough.
But if you leave it sitting there for years at a time, yeah, it dries out, it develops cracks, and you won't really notice it. But yeah, it slowly starts to bake stuff, and it's sort of a reasonable argument in that the vast majority of overclockers that are picking up, and it was for a benchmark for which was the best paste at the time. those guys, if it's the same paste after 6 months, they're being lazy and got distracted with other stuff. They're constantly putting it on, putting it out, because that's the problem with those sticky TIMs you used to get from AMD and Intel. Is that's a one-use thing. You tear that off, and half of it's on your core and half of it's on the heat sink, and neither wants to come off. So I'm interested to see if this lasts. But then again, anyone who's delidding their bloody CPU is not expecting it to last for 4 years.
So, I mean, it looks like
So Kyle's pointing out in the chat that they're testing. They found that it wasn't necessarily the TIM; it was the Z height between the heat spreader and the die.
sure that would explain a delta T.
Yeah. So
It seems odd that it would explain that much of a delta T with a pretty.
It's huge, and I'm looking at it. It was 91C under full load down to 68C.
Yeah, that's holy crap.
This did not necessarily immediately
like-
give you a 5 gigahertz clock speed.
Yeah, it didn't change. It didn't change what
they-
he got out of it, really.
Well, it did, but he had some serious fuckery to do. With either feeding over voltage up to like 1.35 or so or above, dropping RAM down to 260s or 2666, a couple of other things, but it could reach it. So it's not going to magically make you have a 5 gigahertz processor. On the other hand, it's going to drop your temps either down to the 60s or down to room temperature because you killed that $400 CPU. So if Ken printed you out one of the 3D shrouds, definitely blame him.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So it's something to look at if you're interested. I think the hard OCP article that Kyle's linked to that they did seems pretty in depth, and you can kind of see what he's talking about with the Z height there a little better in photos than you can from our description.
Anybody's allowed to read that except for Maury. Maury's not allowed to read that.
At least until about a week before QuakeCon.
He likes cracking things.
Yeah, leaving your heatsink installed on a system that's delidded and then bringing it to QuakeCon in a car is not a good idea.
Well, he had that D-lid guard on it. There's how much that worked.
Yeah, it didn't help him. Anyway.
Made for a great story. We're still telling it years later.
What is Microsoft doing with infrared lasers?
Lasers in the server room. How is this a bad idea?
It's so I know you guys play laser tag in the server room already. So does that mean that this is gonna like add some complexity to that or what?
Well, I mean, it depends if you like the guy that you send into the server room or not, I guess. But it's work out of Kent State that Microsoft is backing to at least a little bit. They've invested some in it. What they're looking at is going wireless. And so they're going to use IR lasers and MEMS-controlled mirrors as the interlink between the servers. It's interesting. I mean, they're certainly getting decent speeds out of it. 10 gigabits a second is not amazing, but it's better than a lot of people have got. You won't have to deal with wire management anymore. You might want to wear protective goggles because even a fairly low power IR laser is going to not be the most pleasant experience with your eyeball. Now, what they did do, which is disgusting, is they called it Firefly, which is an acronym of Free Space Optical Interrack Network with Huge Flexibility, because that totally spells out Firefly, doesn't it? It's pretty tortured, but it's interesting in a way because wire management sucks. It's beautiful when you walk in that very first day of the build out, and over the next 6 months suddenly becomes a very appetizing Italian meal. On the other hand, we're talking direct line of sight. Even if you're tossing mirrors in there, you walk into your server room. Congratulations, you've just taken down a few clusters because you just walked in front of the bloody laser.
There's just random packet loss happening, and you can like tell
Yeah, I am not doing Mission Impossible into the server room
Yeah.
to try and get to something.
Where's Jeremy at in the server room? Well, which server's down?
You just put all the lasers at the tops of the racks,
Yeah.
and you extend your
Just point 'em across.
ceiling, so you're going up like
Oh, I
at 10
see.
feet.
True.
Perfect.
Because of course there's been no dust coming down and degrading the signal then either.
Just make
No.
it
Or-
a clean room, and then you're good.
Yeah, because we can afford that.
Lasers.
Frickin'
It's
lasers.
interesting. I don't think the frickin' laser beams are going to work, but it's interesting.
Okay. Next, ZeniMax awarded $500 million. Speaking of freaking lasers, in the Oculus lawsuit. But,
Considering they're asking for $4 billion,
well, there's
they're
that.
probably
but
not the happiest people in the
Here's the
world.
thing, though. I thought like Carmack was like their central argument at the beginning for this thing, and Carmack is specifically not fined, even though other people were. It's almost like Carmack has been
Well, I mean,
vindicated in
Sure,
the way the result came out.
sure. They filed a lawsuit, and then in discovery, they found some other stuff, so that You know,
I
like-
guess. But
yeah,
I thought the stuff they kept trying to prove
yes,
was that Carmack stole a bunch of stuff from him.
yes, that's what they were trying to prove.
But apparently he didn't steal anything from them.
They obviously didn't prove that.
Or at least if he copied some stuff, he didn't bring it to the other company or whatever. But whatever the case may be, right? I don't know.
Yeah, it essentially, from what I understand, boils down to NDA breaches from Palmer Luckey and Brendan Uribe and Oculus Facebook as a company.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Wasn't there some issue with the use of the Doom BFG edition trademark as well in that suit?
there might have been. I
Probably.
I just kind of
They were throwing like whatever they could see stick in that lawsuit from my, perspective of it. But okay. I mean, and then they'll probably appeal it. And then if it doesn't go through on appeal, then Facebook will sneeze and $500 million will come out of will fall out of their sock, and then they'll pay that off, and then they'll just be done with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna be.
Because they bought the company for $2 billion in the first place. What's another like 20% or 25% or whatever that works out to?
It was 10 billion.
Oh, was it 10?
I think they bought Oculus for
Thought it was
10
2.
billion. I could be wrong, but
No.
I remember it being some stupid.
It was supposed to be $2
crazy
billion.
number.
It's at the beginning of the article, unless that's wrong.
Silicon Valley valuations. Who the hell?
I
knows
mean, if
anymore?
it was 10, it's even less of a percentage of
it looks like it was 2 billion.
All right.
2 billion, 10 billion. It's basically the same to me.
Yeah.
Well, we
Never
made it
gonna
to-
see
I don't have either, so
All right. Next.
Yeah.
Hardware software picks of the week. Ryan.
Oh, thank the Lord.
Ryan does not. Yeah, I know. Ryan doesn't have one. He's on an airplane. He's going somewhere. His pick is probably
Faster Wi-Fi.
faster Wi-Fi or a bed at this point, probably. Jeremy.
I picked up this little thingy. The very reflective. I don't even know that I can get this. It's a Roku streaming stick.
Streaming stick.
Yes, it's the 4-core version because it's a great marketing term. I have a feeling it's a big little. The remote is wonderful because I've been running Netflix and then YouTube and everything from my computer hooked up to the TV, which means I've got to get my arse off the couch occasionally to switch channels or attempt to stop watching. Now I've got a nice little lovely remote. This particular one will actually save your account, so it is quite happy if you take it anywhere on the road. So if work drags you to some strange location and you're stuck in a hotel room, there's an HDMI slot and a plug. Pop her in, and you're watching your favorite Netflix. The Canadian Netflix, because, well, Canada. But, it's still better than nothing. It's got access to the Google Store, so I haven't really played a lot with the apps yet, but there are quite a few of them that you can grab. It's snappy. You're not sitting there and watching it spin and hoping it's going to load. And then you got it for about an hour, and then halfway through the movie, it takes a wee little break. This one, no problems with it at all. It's been very quick. It's very snappy. unlike my internet just then. It does require, won't, I haven't been able to test it. Apparently you should be able to power it off of the USB plug. If you've got a TV with USB with power out. My ancient machine there doesn't have one, so I've got it plugged into mains, but still it's quiet, it doesn't get warm, and I am very happy with the $50 that I dropped on it.
One of the things that has always really impressed me about Roku is the setup experience. How did you find that?
All 45 seconds to a minute of it was terribly annoying. I what is your Wi-Fi? Oh, it's that one.
Well,
What's your password? Oh, it's that.
So,
Welcome to Netflix.
yeah.
Done. It was less than a minute.
At least the last one I set up, there was like a web browser component. So you would go to it, like, I guess you would get it connected to your network first, and you go to a little short URL, and then you'd say, install Netflix, install Amazon, install all this stuff, and it was automatically push it over, and you could log in with your credentials, so you could use an actual computer to do it instead of messing around with an on-screen keyboard.
I mean, an arrow-based on-screen
Yes,
keyboard?
the arrow-based interface is lovely.
It's like a wonderful startup method. And Roku is the platform that everyone supports. Because it's kind of the oldest one, it's the biggest one, so like every app is on Roku.
Well, and once I get off my arse and build a Plex server, it's going to be compatible as well.
Yeah.
And it'll be feeding off my Wi-Fi, not a problem in the world.
I still think it's comical that like that kind of a solution is so dang slow compared to what 30, 40 years ago we had arcade games with spinners that you could put your initials in for the high score that was like 10 times better than this.
Yeah.
Like you just spin the
but
thing
it started
and go
with
to your
A, so it was much easier.
Well, yeah.
Just getting to the SS that was harder.
Yeah,
You
true.
weren't putting a whole lot of symbols in those, I imagine.
Also true.
I got a 50-character passphrase.
All right. Josh.
Sure. What?
Yeah, you're up.
Me?
Yeah, you.
You know, I heard that there's like a 58 gig patch update to Fallout 4, so I figured if you really wanted to take advantage of that, you should buy the game first. And you can do that on Amazon for $24. It's a physical copy. You got to wait till it gets delivered to you.
You gotta wait for them to deliver you the Steam key inside the box.
Exactly.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not saying it makes sense, but it's funny.
It is funny.
You know, and plus, patience is a virgin.
Just to think that to get deals today, we have to resort to waiting for something to come in the mail.
Yeah.
They have to send you
I got
something.
my first wife, so
Oh.
It's actually the frustrating thing about Amazon, like their Prime video game deals, where like in the first 2 weeks, if you buy a game from Prime, they give you 15% off or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is awesome because it's a $60 game, you get 15% off.
Sure.
It's a good deal.
It is.
But it doesn't work digitally. They have to ship you the copy of the game. Which,
Okay.
You know.
If you
not
really,
saying
I'll
it makes
take it.
sense.
if you
I'll
really
take
want to
it.
send me a box, then send me
Yeah.
a box.
Yeah, go for
Like-
it.
In high school, we used to have a joke about like Microsoft's new product, Microsoft Empty Box. Because at the point, like they would make get these huge box, and all it would have is like a floppy disk in it for like DOS 5.0 or something. Came in a huge box, right? Anyway, me. I couldn't find the exact version that I bought. However, do you have it pulled up? Yeah. So Diamond Clear is a company that makes resins for fixing windshields. And if you happen to crack things that are not windshields, like say your phone screen cracks, and it's just like a hairline crack sort of thing, not like when your screen splinters, like you dropped it off a building or something like that, but like a single hairline crack, it's possible to get crack filler. Josh, don't laugh. It's
He's
possible.
showing UV on it too.
You have to look for you have to look for low viscosity, which is not the kind that I could find in a small vial like we're showing on the stream here. That's like medium viscosity. But if you look around on eBay, you can find it. The stuff's like $2 or $3 for one of these little vials. It's handy to have them, and you also need a UV flashlight to cure it. But it cracks in any kind of like glass, or if like a glass figurine or something gets dropped by a kid and then it shatters in 20 pieces, you can actually put it back together. And with this kind of like windshield repairing stuff, it's designed to match the refractive index of glass as close as possible, right? So once you put the thing back together, conceivably you might not even see the crack, like it just kind of disappears.
My crack usually disappears after a while.
Ken's crack, that's very safe. That's good. Yeah.
He
Anyway.
spent too much time in the studio as an intern.
Yeah, he figured out how to make his crack disappear. I made a crack disappear on an iPhone 6s Plus today with that very stuff.
Did disappear. It's
I mean, you have to look for it, right? But I mean, if you just look at the phone screen,
yeah.
like it's not
I mean,
there.
it's certainly better than it would have been.
Yeah.
It's a cool fix.
Yeah, you have to catch it like right away, because otherwise, if you get dirt and crap in there, then it's not going to work that well. But I mean, it does work. I'd never thought to use it on a phone screen until today, but holy crap, like it's pretty amazing. Especially when you like put it on one edge of it and kind of put a suction cup on the screen so you can kind of flex it a little and open up the seam for the stuff to run down, and it literally just runs like an inch every second.
Oh, kinky.
Just down this crack. Yeah. It's amazing. Just slid right in there.
Best experience all day.
Yeah. Very satisfying.
So,
No.
so before we go way off the rails here, someone was asking.
Too late.
Yeah. Does that affect the capacitive touch?
No, it didn't change anything on this. But I mean, it still worked with the crack there. Like most of the time when you see cracks in an iPhone screen, like the thing still works.
Mm-hmm.
And this being
See, iPhone uses in-cell touch, so the touch sensors are actually integrated into the LCD panel. So
Yeah.
the glass is simply a layer of Gorilla Glass over the top.
Yeah, the glass is literally just glass with like nothing important in it, right?
So it's just something to break.
Basically, yeah. It's just protecting the stuff under it.
Just take the glass off. It'll take you that much closer to the screen.
Oh, you get bare metal experience, man. It's awesome.
The
It's like
resolution
delidding
is
your
so
iPhone.
much better that way.
Yeah,
Resolution
the
is
Z
better.
height goes way down on that.
Yeah, and then it runs cooler, like, for that heatsink that's on there. Just picture someone putting thermal paste on an iPhone screen, digitizer, Anyway, yeah, I mean, it worked pretty good. And this being a 6S, like the Force Touch, like still just didn't seem affected. And this seems to be staying put, even though I tried Force Touching in some areas where the crack was. And it's not messing it up. So
Overall, it was a success.
so far, we'll see if it lasts. If not, then I'll have to, go spend $30 or $40 on eBay and get a replacement screen and do some.
I have a feeling that Gorilla Glass was never specifically designed to be pressed on really hard all the time. I can't imagine it's a good thing over like a 2-year span to be like pressing really hard on your iPhone screen.
I don't really use Force Touch though, so that's not
I-
what made it happen.
I bet Apple has paid Corning enough to make that a thing
Yeah.
that it's able to do.
That stuff is surprisingly flexible. There was that demo
We
video
need this to
from-
last 1 to 5 days after our warranty expires.
There was
That
one
was a
I don't
7
remember-
using 4 or 3.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It
'Cause
seems
4
so meaningless.
is like more shatter-proof but less durable overall than 3 was, I think.
There was that promo video they showed during one of the launches for like maybe the 5 or something when they were showing how they were testing their screens and they showed the screen itself, just the glass in the test rig with the press pushing down on it, and it like almost tacoed it and it was still like didn't shatter.
Oh, the hydraulic
wasn't-
press channel.
Yes.
Yes, pioneered by Apple's like demo of their
Let's see.
Anyway.
That way when your phone bends, your glass doesn't break. They engineered it
suppose.
to stand up to
It's flexible.
the rigors of everyday use of an iPhone. Like, being shoved into the back pocket of my wife's jeans and then she sits down and
Who does such a thing?
Women.
Your wife.
yes.
They don't-
Many
They don't have
people.
real front pockets, so they use the back ones.
Yeah, she has the Plus, the 7 Plus now, so it doesn't. That's the only place she can put it, and I keep on warning her, like, you can't sit down when that's in your pocket. You're going to bend your phone.
Mind you, in ladies' wear, it's impressive to have a pocket big enough to fit the S7S.
Anyway,
Who's next?
All right, Ken, you want to embarrass yourself?
Well, Jeremy's pick kind of took the steam out of mine. If you're looking for a more expensive option to the Roku that can do things like 4K and HDR, the Shield has actually become a pretty good device. I think it was late or early last year the Shield TV, whatever you want to call it, launched, and it had some support. It had like stuff like Netflix 4K and Game Stream, but they've really supported it with software updates. The latest update just came out. I have the Shield 2015 instead of the 2017 that's just coming out that we saw at CES, or 2015 or 2016, whatever. And they just released the sort of Android 7 Shield Experience 5.0 update to it, adding things like Amazon 4K HDR video, which is really something I've been waiting for because my TV doesn't have a built-in app for that, and Amazon has a lot of the streaming HDR content that's available now. So that's a big plus. They're one of the few devices that can actually do that. Amazon themselves don't sell a Fire TV device that can do HDR yet, which is kind of mind-boggling. So that was a nice bonus. They've bumped GameStream up to be able to do 4K HDR, which is interesting, I guess. I don't really see myself streaming a game from a gaming PC at 4K HDR and expecting that to work very well across my home network, but we'll see. We might get to test that out at some point.
But
And-
these are also the devices you guys use to prop up tables, right? When you got a short leg.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, of course. What else would we use? There's some cool things coming with the Shield that they teased at CES. The Google Assistant, Google Home integration is one of the big things. So sort of the Amazon Echo-like device, the Google Home stuff. So you can do home automation and all that fun stuff. I think will be interesting to see how exactly that shakes out, comparing it to my Amazon Echo, which I use to turn my lights on and off because I'm a crazy idiot person who doesn't like light switches, I guess.
You could get the clap.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm not entirely sure why they've continued to support the Shield, considering it probably hasn't sold particularly well. Just kind of looking at the online communities for Android TV stuff, they're very small at this point. But they keep putting effort into it, and it seems to be a pretty decent device at this point. And the $200 price point for buying the new Shield 2017 is actually pretty decent. So if you're looking for sort of an all-in-one media streamer for 4K HDR stuff, like a lot of people might be now, it's a pretty good pick. I'd recommend it. Sebastian,
Wait. Alex has something.
you put this order in here. This is all out of order.
It should be me.
It should be Sebastian. Fine, Sebastian.
I just don't understand how Alex has spare time to play a game.
It's not being worked hard enough.
Obviously, that's it. I need to be working harder.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where's
yes.
the
Yeah.
cooking oil or mineral oil? Sorry.
Mm.
Yeah, if you've got
Cooking
time to
oil is a
game,
whole
you've got
nother
time
thing.
to clean or edit or something.
Oh.
All right, so I
You
had
could have been playing
put
with
on
your
a-
crack.
No more crack talk.
All right.
I've been looking around for an updated or a new sound pressure meter. The one that I have is pretty limited, does not allow me to change like the polling rate, doesn't let me change the weighting, and I was starting to strongly suspect that it wasn't even reading below like 33, 34 decibels anyway. So I found one from, I think it's Nady, the DSM-1X, which had good reviews in the various sites I was looking around. The important thing about this is not only does it go all the way down to 30 decibels, but it does it from a range of 32 hertz to 8 kilohertz, and quite a few of the meters, including I think mine, only go down to about 100 hertz. So the really low sounds that might be like some sort of audible humming or something in like a loop that you can hear when you're standing next to a cooler and are not registering at all in the SPL meter. Hopefully now I can actually include those results in like cooler and case reviews. But for about $75 compared to a lot of the much more expensive like solutions out there, including, you know, Reed Instruments, X-Tech and stuff, like to actually get one that goes down to 30 decibels from a name brand, you're usually talking about $250 and up. So if this one ends up being good, it's a very nice alternative if you're looking for something like this.
All right. Now,
Sound.
Alex.
This is the future.
All right. So, my choice this week was RimWorld, which of course is not gonna frame up on here. This is a one-man development. It's been around for, I want to say, a year and a half in alpha. It's $30 currently on Steam. It's a colony sim. You crash land on a foreign, an alien planet, and you have to, survive, which you will not do on many occasions. It's kind of billed as more of a storyteller game than actually you have a plot and you have a goal. It's just we're going to see what kind of entertainment we can do to your poor hapless colonist along the way. But if you're
Because it's full of like hairdressers and telephone sanitizers and such, right?
No, it's a little bit more dark than that.
You saying Douglas Adams isn't dark?
A little bit more overtly. There's subtlety to it. It's just like, no, everything catches fire and your wildlife is killing everyone and everyone dies. Start over. I find it pretty entertaining. That might make me a horrible person.
You hang out with us by definition.
I'm glad I fit in.
All right. Well,
That actually looks. I heard about that. I think like a year ago when it was still kind of early on and
Yep.
and the stuff. That it looks pretty cool.
It's changing very quickly.
That's always
Um,
interesting, at least.
So if you put it down for a month, you come back a month later, it's a different game.
Yeah, that could be frustrating at times, but also kind of cool to see the development process.
Yep.
Go along.
And there's a considerable amount of mods available. So if you don't like the base game, there's a lot of different ways to mix it up.
all right. Well, that about wraps it up.
Yep.
Awesome.
About.
PCPer.com/podcast is where you'll find the show notes for this episode and all the other ones. Twitter.com/Ryan Shroud if you want to yell at the boss. Twitter.com/PCPer if you want to yell at the boss. He's the one that checks that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's about it. So with that, I'm Alan Malventano.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Sebastian Peak.
Oh, I'm
That's
not
still
using this
life
part.
with
Sebastian
You're
Peak.
supposed to say something.
Nope.
He's
I'm not
discount.
sharing
You
my
only
real
get
Second
identity.
one.
producer mode.
Not sharing my identity. Sorry.
Fine.
Cut to black.
All right. Cut to black and back from black. Back in black?
Oh, crap.
I mean, obviously you can't cut to black when I say cut to black. You gotta leave it hang for a couple of seconds there, but
Just wait for the
Yeah,
awkward facial expressions.
There's
yeah.
black.
Yes.
I'm full of awkward facial expressions.
Oh, apparently so am I.
No, you were doing still life.
Yeah. I tried to tone down the facial expressions now.
As it turns out, this is a lot easier. We're not trying to switch podcasts at the same time.
Yeah.
Is there a way to like have it auto switch based on who's talking or no?
No.
No, that's
and
Google Hangouts.
It wouldn't work well.
Yeah, not
Who
with
cares if it works well? It's easy.
For every problem, there is a simple, elegant solution that is completely wrong.
Right. Can we just start doing this on like multi-user FaceTime?
Yeah.
I hear
Yeah.
that's a thing now.
I don't know. You're and we lost.
There you go.
him.
See?
I mean,
he's
his
gone.
video hasn't
FaceTime.
moved in the past 15 minutes.
Aw.
Yeah.
We have been reduced to doing Google Hangouts, which does do that.
Auto switch? Yeah.
Thankfully, not in a long time.
So is my audio gone or just the video?
Audio's
No,
fine.
Your audio's still there.
Okay.
You have been replaced with the spinning circle.
You were
Sweet.
doing a very good impression of a YouTube video buffering.
Oh, so it was just like a still
now it came
before?
back.
Yeah, I mean, you were frozen for a while.
You were frozen for like
Long
half
time.
an hour or something.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Wait.
it was coming and going.
My internet sucks.
Yeah.
And my
Move
router
to
sucks.
Wyoming. They've got good stuff.
Yeah, we're doing pretty well lately. Shock and awe.
Maybe Charter finally did something. I don't
They
know.
got it together.
Yeah. I've actually
All right.
been. I mean, we've only had Charter for a couple of weeks now, but they reduced my bill by $20 and doubled my speed, so I'm pretty happy so far.
Ah. It's not bad.
Yeah, And it's the same reliability as Time Warner was because it's the same damn network. So
Yeah, funny thing about ISPs and telco providers, right?
yeah. Now there's a rumor that Verizon's gonna buy Charter, so we'll see if that happens. And
Yeah, all during the 5G talk, I was thinking, it's like that's wonderful technology. It's a wonderful, wonderful tech, and I it's great that it's coming along. No one will sell it. None of the ISPs around here. I have called up every mobile provider. None of them offer fixed point wireless.
I have a friend in Columbus who has it, but I guess I don't know anyone down here.
I mean, there was one company that was around like 3 years ago
Yeah.
when I was first looking at doing this, because I don't want to hear about bad internet. I have a 2 meg down connection with a 600K up.
Sounds like you should move.
I will. I will move. But the closest I've gotten is T-Mobile with a 6 gig plan and use their binge on. We have to run all of our Netflix and streaming through the T-Mobile connection.
With their downgraded quality.
It's better than it works.
Oh yeah,
Not
absolutely.
working at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, data cap's really coming to play there. There's no one who you can even pay for a high data cap.
Congratulations, you found worse than
Are you sure
Canucks.
Verizon was doing that at some point? They were offering a home product.
They were doing the fixed point wireless, but I don't believe it was available here.
Okay, yeah. I knew they had that as a thing at some point. I didn't know availability.
I mean, I will give people plenty of money to do this.
Yeah.
Time Warner, when they were looking at bringing a connection out, their backhaul stops 6,000 feet down the road. They wanted $100,000 to put a relay in.
Yeah. Just think of the property value increase, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can get everybody else willing to buy that property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Crazy talk. Well,
Hey,
I
I'm
don't have
unfrozen
anything
again.
interesting to say. I've actually kind of got to run away.
That
Live to
rhymes.
find another day.
Was
So,
me
yeah.
signing
Yeah,
in the
my
chair.
first work meeting happens in 12 hours.
I'm
That's
sorry.
depressing.
My first work meeting happens in like 7 hours. Okay, 8.
Oh yeah. It is
Yeah.
after midnight, isn't it?
Yeah.
All
Podcasting
right.
gets a bit rough now that I'm working the actual like office gig as opposed
Hey,
to
next
this
week
thing.
we'll start at 9:30, so we'll actually start by 10,
Yeah.
and we'll be done at 11:30.
Damn it.
Yeah, that always happens.
Well, it sounds like Ryan's not going to be here for the month of February, so
Yeah.
Really?
he's got
Nasty.
he's on his first out of 4 trips this month. I think.
That's nuts.
Oh,
Yeah.
so he did confirm the 4th trip?
Sounded like it.
Sort of.
Fun.
I don't pay attention.
Don't be a turd, Josh.
That's why I get paid the big bucks. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Goodbye. I
Bye,
think it's time
bye.
for me to go
Business
too.
yet again.
Thanks for
And I'm
watching all.
frozen.
See y'all in a week.
See ya.
So, yeah.